Try again. Okay, don't hurt your back. Okay. Reverend Dana is older than I am, okay? So, Rob, will you help Reverend Rob Ely, Dr. Rob Ely? Will you help Dana to lift the box? You can't lift it up over your heads? Okay, do you two get out of the way. Now, my friend Devontae Edwards. Reverend Devontae, will you come to the box? How many of you believe Devontae can lift the box? Not very many. They don't believe in you. I believe in you. Let's see if you can lift the box to your waist. Keep going. Keep going. All right, hold it there. How many of you believe Devontae can lift the box over his head? Raise your hand if you think he can do it. Not very many. Let's see. Let's get it. Give him a hand. Lift it up. Lift it up. Come on. Let's go. Let's go. All the way up. There we go. There you go. Give a hand to Devontae. There we go. Nutella, I'm just speaking in English tonight. I'll try to go slow because I'm from the southern United States and our English is a little bit different sometimes. I was once speaking in Ethiopia and I tried to say something in Amharic, which is their language. And my attempt was to tell them that you are looking very good today. But I didn't say it correctly, and I told them you look like big chickens today. So I won't try to speak to you in Garo. I would just make a mistake. I greet you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, and on behalf of One Church, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And also, I grew up in West Virginia, and that's my original connection here with you is from the West Virginia Baptist Convention, so that even though I have moved from there, I still feel like that West Virginia is my home. I'd like to thank the convention staff, especially Dr. Janong Sangma and Wane for hosting us. You have been so kind, and I'm thankful for this opportunity. I would also like to recognize where I grew up in the West Virginia Baptist Convention. Mr. Paul Morton, he traveled here with us this week. Brother Paul where are you, Paul? Are you over there? Will you please stand up? Everybody knows who you are. Very thankful for you. Earlier today, you honor Paul very much. Thank you. One child came to him and asked him if he was Santa Claus today. So he said, no, not Santa Claus. But Paul's father was my pastor when I grew up. And much of the involvement I have, even my involvement in Camp Cowan, which is where I know most of these men, really I know all of them because of Camp Cowan. His father was instrumental in me being a part of that ministry. I'd like to tell you a brief story. Before I got here, I was visiting in Africa. Most of the education that I do with pastors is on the continent of Africa. And in my recent visits to Ethiopia and Uganda and South Africa and Zambia, I do want to share with you that as the Apostle Paul said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, that your news of your faithfulness has gone out to everywhere that the gospel is preached. I say that because everywhere that I go, I share about how God is at work in Garo Hills. You are well known around the world for what God is doing here and how you are leading in sending missionaries and starting churches. And so I praise Jesus for the opportunity of being with you here tonight. I would like to go back to a time when I had just turned 40 years old. I was in my first church of Christian ministry, becoming as a senior pastor. And the church grew quite a bit to the point on one Easter Sunday in 2010, our church had over 1,000 people on Easter Sunday. And our church had gone from a small size to having 1,000. And I was feeling very good about myself, because I had led the church to become from one of the smaller to one of the largest churches in our convention. Not long after that, I read an article in the newspaper that said that our area had around 250,000 people in the area around my church. 250,000 people. And in a later article, it said that on any given Sunday morning, there were around 38,000 people in church in our area, what we call the tri-state. So it was a small percentage. Only about 15 to 20% of our people were in church on every Sunday morning. But what struck me the most, that hurt my heart, was when I saw the number of 250,000 people, and when I thought about how our church had grown, it hit my mind that even if our church grew by another 1,000 people, that we would not have even addressed the lostness in our area by 1%. It hit me at that point in life that growing one individual church, just one church growing, will never reach our community. We could grow by 1,000 or even 2,000, and still there would be so many lost people in our community. I needed to change my mindset about how to reach the world for Christ. And so I asked God to show me, as I would read in my Bible, how would Jesus do this if he were here today? And it began in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew. And I was reading through the book of Matthew. I came to chapter 9, verse 35. And it said that Jesus was going through all the towns and villages in northern Israel, in the Galilee area. And he was healing everyone. And he looked upon the crowds, and I can remember, as the Bible says, the multitudes. It probably looked a lot like what we had here today. Over 100,000 people coming, wanting to touch Jesus. And it says in Matthew chapter 9 that when Jesus looked out over the crowds, that he had compassion on them like they were sheep without a shepherd. They were harassed. They were helpless. And when the Bible says in the Greek language, the word there for compassion, it literally means to be sick, to suffer in one's stomach. It made him sick to his stomach. Why? Because Jesus, I believe, experienced for the first time in his existence, and he always existed as God, but when he became a human being, he lost the attribute of omnipresence, of being able to be everywhere at the same time. And when Jesus stood before the hundreds to go around, to change the world, didn't even have time to spend one day per city. So he said to the people The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, pray that God send out to the harvest workers unto the field. And then the Bible tells us that he chose his 12 disciples and he sent them out to the villages to preach the good news of the kingdom. And they came back in 6 months and they were excited. But Jesus said to them, we still have to reach more people. And then we come to Matthew chapter 14. And there is a miracle there. And I would like to ask you a question, especially to the pastors. There are only 2 miracles listed in all 4 of the Gospels. I will say that again. There are only 2 miracles listed in all 4 of the Gospels. One of the miracles I'm sure you would name, because if this miracle isn't in the gospel, it would not be a gospel. The first and most important miracle is the miracle of the resurrection, Jesus being raised from the dead. But there's only one more miracle that is named in all 4. Could you guess what that would be? Now, before I get into that story, I'll give you a hint. It's about a little boy's lunch. It's the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and the feeding of the 5,000. And Jesus, it says in Matthew chapter 14, verse 14, this is the first time that we see this word used again that we saw earlier in Matthew chapter 9, that Jesus sees the masses and once again, he has compassion on them. He is sick to his stomach. They need food. And the disciples say to him, send the people home so they can find something to eat. And Jesus looks back at them and he says, no. Now, this is why this miracle is so important, because it's going to answer the question, how was Jesus going to multiply himself? Because he couldn't be everywhere at once. What lesson was he wanting to teach his disciples about how the world would be reached with the good news of Jesus Christ? And so he says to the disciples, don't send them home, you feed them. And the disciples looked at him like he had lost his mind. And they said it would take thousands and thousands and thousands of rupees to fill all these people, to feed them all. They were focusing, please watch, on what God had not given them versus what God had given them. They were focused on their lack of resources instead of what they had there in their hands, which was what was just one little boy's lunch. But they missed the number one story Jesus wanted to communicate to them. And I want to share that with you. I have some friends here. You guys, if you could, come up on the stage. And would you please welcome Reverend Dana Gatewood. He's coming to the stage now. He's a longtime friend. All 3 of you, please come up on the stage. If you will see over here to my right, your left, there is a case. And it weighs over 150 kilograms, 150 kilos. And Dana, will you please, all 3 of you come forward, please. I would like to start with Mr. Dana, Reverend David. I would like you to pick up that 150 kilos by yourself. Yes, please, show us your strength. Try again. Okay, don't hurt your back. Okay. Reverend Dana is older than I am, okay? So, Rob, will you help Reverend Rob Ely, Dr. Rob Ely? Will you help Dana to lift the box? You can't lift it up over your heads? Okay, do you two get out of the way? Now, my friend Devontae Edwards, Reverend Devontae, will you come to the box? How many of you believe Devontae can lift the box? Not very many. They don't believe in you. I believe in you. Let's see if you can lift the box to your waist. Keep going. Keep going. All right, hold it there. How many of you believe Devontae can lift the box over his head? Raise your hand if you think he can do it. Not very many. Let's see. Let's get it. Give him a hand. Lift it up. Lift it up. Come on. Let's go. Let's go. All the way up. There we go. There you go. Give a hand to Devontae. There we go. Okay, put it down easily. Careful. 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 Now, this is why I shared that illustration with you. Before the box, okay, you can sit down. Thank you for helping me. Before, when I gave the box to Reverend Dana and my brother Rob, the box was in the wrong hands. But when the box was in the right hands, it could be lifted high. I asked some people this week, if you put this cricket ball in my hands, it's not worth anything. I'm not a very good cricket ball player. But if you put this cricket ball in the hands of Virat Kohli, it is worth millions and millions of rupees, is it not? It's worth more in his hands than it is in my hands. The cricket ball, if it's in the right hands, is worth a lot of money. If I would sit down at the piano and make up a song, it might be worth a little bit. But if you put it in the hands of A.R. Rahman, that piano becomes a lot more valuable. It's just a matter of making sure that it is in the right hands. Are you following what I'm saying? If you put this staff in my hands, it's just a piece of wood. But if you put it in the hands of Moses, it can part the Red Sea. If you put this stone in my hands, it's not worth very much. But if you put it in the right hands, if you put it in the hands of the shepherd boy who would become King David, this stone can slay a giant. This is what the disciples didn't understand. If you put 5 loaves and 2 fish, or 5 loaves and 2 fish, or 5 fish and 2 loaves, if you put any of that in my hands, that's all you're going to have. But if you put it in the hands of Jesus, it can feed everyone. And this is what I want to share with you. Whenever we feel like we don't have what we need, please remember this idea. It's not about the object. It's about that object being placed in the right hands. You in Garo Hills, you have everything you need if you put it in Jesus's hands. This is why Jesus says in Matthew chapter 14, verse 18, bring the gifts to me. Bring the boys' lunch to me. Bring your resources to me. Bring your health to me. Bring your love life to me. Bring it to Jesus. Put it in the right hands. Sometimes when we don't feel like we're getting what we need, we try to put our faith in the hands of other groups. We try to perhaps put our faith in the hands of the political process. I'm from the perspective of someone in the United States. We have made a very big mistake, and I beg you to not do this here. We have been, by and large, most Christians have been associated with one political party or one presidential candidate. And it damages our ability to reach out and tell other people who don't know Jesus about the love of Jesus because they associate us with many Christians' politics. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we can never put our faith in the hands of anyone other than the right hands of Jesus. And then we see him put the food in the baskets and give it back to the disciples. Once we give it to Jesus, he asks us to distribute it. He put it in the hands of sinners and prostitutes and made them fishers of men. And then everyone was fed. Now, after this, then Jesus sent out 72 people to share the gospel. I want you to watch the numbers here. At first, there were just 12, and then there were 72. The reason Jesus said to his disciples in the illustration, the miracle of feeding the 5,000, is if you just give what you have to me, I will bless it, but then you have to hand it to others. Each of the disciples went and brought 6. 12 times 6 equals 72. My question to you here tonight, what if each of you brought 6 people to Christ over the upcoming year? That would increase, and then those 6 people brought 6 people the next year. And then those 6 people brought 6 people the next year. That is how we move the needle. That is how we would reach our community in Christ. One church of 1,000 can't do it. One church of 2,000 or even 3,000 can't reach India. But if we have 1,000 churches of 50, starting 1,000 more churches of 50, that will make a larger impact than one church going from 500 to 1,000. Do you follow my saying? But there is one thing that Jesus couldn't place back in our hands. And that is these 2 nails. The only right hands that these could be placed in was Jesus. He took the nails in our hands so we wouldn't have to take the nails that would end up in our hands. He took them to himself. I close with this last thought. The theme for this convention from the book of Psalms has been great things God has done. Great things he has done. And he has done great things for us on the cross. And that is something that had to be in the right hands of Jesus. We could not do this for ourselves. But I want to share with you what I'm seeing around the world. Not only has God done great things in the past, but he is doing great things today. And he also shared with his disciples, greater things than I have done, you will do. So I'm here to close this session with this idea. Great things God has done, great things God is doing, but even greater than that, you can do greater things and you will do greater things in the future as long as you put your faith in Jesus' hands. And that is my prayer for you, Garo Baptist Convention. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, you did not choose the poor or the rich of the world to manifest your greatness like you have the poor. You chose those with no political influence, no riches, not those of the highest education, but as your